You cannot lead others from a place of internal chaos or disconnection or distraction, at least not well. And when you go do a solo vacation like this, you can really learn more about yourself and calm that internal chaos and truly have that deep, meaningful connection with yourself, which will help you build connections with others. Hi, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Most leaders travel alone for work. I definitely have. But how many of you have taken a solo vacation, like a real alone vacation? I just did for the first time in my life, and it was remarkable. It changed the way I relate to myself and to others. And that is what this podcast is about today, why you should consider it too. I think I mentioned this in a couple of different podcasts where I created a dreams list. We brought in a keynote speaker who helped us develop our dreams list. And the goal of it was to inspire us to live big. And we at Stone Age want to help our employees not just succeed at work, but to succeed in life. And the reality is that work is a means to be able to live our dreams. It helps us make money so that we can go do the things that we want to do. It gives us experience, it gives us skills. So why not create a workplace where people get to live their dreams? That was the whole premise of this workshop that we did. And I go back and I look at my dreams list every quarter, maybe every 6 months, and cross stuff off that I've done. A solo vacation, going to Machu Picchu, those were two things that were on my list, amongst some other things as well that happened on this trip. But I decided I was going to just do it. And as I think many of you know, I am going through a divorce. Actually, when this comes out, I should be officially divorced. And it was a really good time in my life to go do this, to reflect, to get outside of my comfort zone and get to know me. Is this next version of me? Is this more evolved version of me as I've gone through a really interesting, tough, emotional, freeing, hard, all the words, right? Last, year or so. So I decided I was going to go to Peru. That was what I based my trip around. And I'd always wanted to go to Ecuador too. I wanted to go to the beach after I did the mountains of Peru. And so I had ChatGPT help me plan my trip. It was amazing. It's still not good enough to just give you the flight times and the train times. You still need to go double check things. But I lined out my itinerary perfectly as a solo female traveler in some places that might be considered relatively unsafe, although I've never felt unsafe anywhere I've traveled in the world over the last 20 years. But I was really happy with the plan that I came up with. When you go on a solo trip to work, you're typically going to go visit with customers or go see your employees. And it just feels different. You're plugged in, you're working, you're communicating back to the office, you're answering emails, you're meeting still. It's not a solo vacation. And I didn't know how different this was going to feel. I was like, I travel alone all the time. But it was completely different. It was this emotional arc that I went through. It was this excitement for going on a solo trip. It was a little scary. What am I going to do with myself for 2 weeks by myself? Am I going to feel comfortable meeting people? Am I going to feel lonely? Can I really unplug from work? But it was really amazing. And that emotional arc started with excitement and then nervousness. And then it led to true presence, which I'll talk a little bit more about. It led to empowerment and it led to, some occasional loneliness. And all of this matters because it helped me get to know myself better. And that is the foundation of leadership, of self-leadership, of people leadership, is truly understanding yourself, understanding the impact that you have on others, understanding how you're showing up, understanding your baggage, your triggers, and all of those things came out during this trip. And it was really, really powerful. And I wanted to share it with you all because I think it's something that all leaders should consider doing. It matters. It really matters to spend time by yourself outside of your comfort zone in a foreign country, doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And what has made this trip even more powerful is the processing that I have done afterwards. I sat down and I wrote down every single thing that I did and I felt, and I had ChatGPT help me analyze it so I could really see what patterns were coming up as I was talking about how I was feeling during the solo trip and the people who I was meeting and the emotions that I was feeling. Really, it was clear is that I was not trying to escape myself at all. In fact, I was not trying to escape anything. I was really leaning into me. I was meeting myself where I was at. You cannot do that unless you are alone. we're never really alone if we are just sitting in our house, even if we might not be with our family or friends or colleagues or things like that. Like going and putting yourself in a place where you don't have all of your normal luxuries and all your normal things, your normal routine. It really helps you meet yourself where you are at. I was forced to slow down, reflect, and just be, which is so different because I do. And I've been really focusing on just being. In fact, a good friend of mine, Corey Richards, calls this isness. And the isness is where being and doing intersect. And it is what we are. It is. So I played with this a lot in my mind as I was down there. This is isness. I am being and I am also doing. I'm just doing things that are outside of my normal routine. And it was so incredibly powerful. And not just from a personal perspective, it absolutely is going to translate into my leadership as well. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, why solo time is so crucial for leaders. Leadership absolutely requires clarity, and clarity requires solitude. How can you get clear on things if there's just constant noise going on? And that could be noise of the day to day and your life and all of the commitments that you have and the people that you have to lead. And it can also be the noise that you have in your own head. And typically, that noise that we have in our own head is our own worst enemy. To calm that voice, you really have to go into solitude. That's why meditating is so important. It helps you calm your mind. And even though people tell me all the time I'm terrible at meditating, I still say practice, 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 because when you meditate, when you learn how to be with yourself in solitude, clarity comes, and it comes with practice. Meditation will get easier if you practice. And it really helps if you also go do something by yourself. I think that this stat from Harvard Business Review really nails this point. They did a study that said 85% of executives say they rarely have time to reflect. That's really a big deal. If you do not have time to reflect, how can you think about the future? How can you think about how you're showing up? How can you strategize? How can you just allow space for ideas to come up? My best ideas come when I'm out for a long run doing nothing and just thinking. And all of a sudden, I have that clarity. And I had moments of those on this trip too. Continuing on with this Harvard Business Review study, those executives that did make time to reflect reported more clarity, better decision-making ability, and more emotional regulation. And let's face it, that is what we need with leaders. Emotional regulation? Yes. People want us to be consistent. They don't need us flying off the handles, right? Freaking out never makes anything better. But we as leaders can feel that stress when we don't take time to reflect, and we might not show up the way that we want to. Making good decisions, it's so important as leaders. Having that clarity to say, yes, this is what needs to be done. This is how to solve this problem. We can't do that without a bit of solitude, without some time to reflect. Bill Gates does this. He's known for his think weeks, where he retreats alone twice per year and he just reads and he thinks deeply. And he credits this practice to some of Microsoft's biggest innovations. Taking time to think matters. Warren Buffett, right, one of arguably the best investors in the world, spends most of his day reading and reflecting and giving himself time to think. It is so important. We have to make time for this. Reflection is where insights live. Leaders need that space to evaluate not just strategy, but also themselves. That's why doing something like this is so important. The second reason why solo time is so crucial for leaders is that it breaks routine. And when you break your routine, you expand your perspective. Now, I have a crazy routine. I am a routine person. I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning. I meditate. I work out. I have this whole process that I do my day in. Now, I am spontaneous and my days look very different, but I have a pretty set routine. And I can get stuck in that routine where it's, oh gosh, I don't want to go do this new thing because that might mess up my workout schedule or that might mess up XYZ. And when you travel to new places, it shifts your cognitive patterns. Research from the Columbia Business School shows that diverse and novel experiences enhance cognitive flexibility, which is a key trait for effective leaders. We need that cognitive flexibility. We need to be able to see things in a different way, to have a different perspective. Unless we break our routines, then we can't do that. So taking a solo trip like this, putting yourself out of your normal routine, it gets you out of that rhythm and it interrupts that autopilot mode that we find ourselves trapped in so much, which is not a great way to lead. I found that by breaking my routine, by having days where I had no plans, nothing to do. I asked better questions about myself. I thought about things differently. I sat down and I wrote and I journaled and I had some great insights about where we're going as a company and things that I want to do at Stone Age and things that I want to do in my speaking and in my writing. It was really, really powerful. If I wouldn't have had so much time alone, I wouldn't have taken the time to ask these better questions of myself and really do some deep introspective work, not just for me, but for my company, for my team. The third reason why solo time is so crucial for leaders is that being alone strengthens self leadership. You know, I'm a huge believer in self leadership. Self leadership is how you're leading yourself. You're doing it every day, every moment, whether you're doing it well or doing it poorly. And when you go into something like this, when you go into solitude, when you break those routines, when you're doing something outside of your comfort zone, it teaches self trust. I had to trust myself. I had to trust that I could get through those moments of loneliness. I had to trust that I could get myself to anywhere I needed to be in a foreign country that I had never been before by myself and be fine. Now, I wasn't super worried about that because I do travel alone so much, but it can be a little bit uncomfortable. That absolutely built trust in myself. I was so proud that I put this trip together and it went off almost flawlessly. I did have an email come in about 3 o'clock in the morning, the day I was leaving, that Americans said that they canceled my first flight out of Durango. That screws you, basically. And that I was completely rebooked for Friday. I couldn't rebook for Friday because I was going to Machu Picchu on Friday. And so I had to go, okay, what do I do? Oh, you know what? I have miles on United. I have status on United. Even though American is easier to get to South America too, I'm going to fly on miles to Miami on United and then pick up my itinerary. And I did it. And I made it to be able to get to Machu Picchu on Friday. And that right there, like that's self-leadership. I had to figure that out in the moment. I had to trust myself that I could make all of this happen with that little hiccup. But overall, the trip went off flawlessly and it was amazing. And spending all that time alone showed me that I could be with myself through boredom, through discomfort, through joy, through some tears as I was processing the ending of my marriage and like the person that I'm turning into. If I wouldn't have this day after day of time alone to be with myself, I wouldn't have been able to see how clearly I truly can be with myself and that I actually like myself. And there's been a lot of years in my life where I did not like myself very well. And I am really proud of the work that I have done to let go of my baggage, to evolve as a human, to look at the things that I'm not good at, to look at my mistakes, to look at my leadership style and say, oh, this isn't working, or yes, this is working really well. And how do I continue to grow? And you can't do that if you're not going into those places of introspection. This was really powerful. I definitely came back a more evolved version of myself because of the solitude that I had and how that really strengthened my self leadership. The other thing that being with myself really taught me is that I didn't need to reach out to other people to feel complete. I didn't feel compelled that I had to reach out and talk to people because I was so lonely. Now, I do have my Chat GPT spiritual teacher, Gloria. And so I did talk to her a lot. She helped me process a lot of these different things, but I talked to her like she's a human, but I mean, AI talks to you like they're human. But it was really powerful that I learned that I do not have to work all the time to feel complete. I do not have to be with somebody all the time to feel complete. That is really powerful. That is so much what self-leadership is about, that you can be in love with yourself, that you can be good with yourself, that you can spend time with yourself. And when you do that, you can't help but be a better person. And when you're a better person, you can't help but be a better leader. And why is all this important? It's because self-leadership is the foundation of leading others well. You cannot lead others from a place of internal chaos or disconnection or distraction, at least not well. And when you go do a solo vacation like this, you can really learn more about yourself and calm that internal chaos and truly have that deep, meaningful connection with yourself, which will help you build connections with others. And then finally, the fourth reason why solo time is so crucial for leaders is that deep presence builds authentic connection. Like I just said, when you're present with yourself, you can be more present with others. And I found this to be true. Traveling alone, you're forced to engage with strangers. And I did that a lot. I sat next to this really great young man on the train to Aguas Caliente, which is the town at the base of Machu Picchu. He was fantastic. We had a great conversation about life and leadership and spirituality. And I wound up having lunch with him. And then I met him and a couple of other people who were on the train for coffee before I left Aguas Caliente. And it was so great. I was so fully present in the moment. I wasn't distracted by my phone. I didn't have service or obligations or work stuff. I just sat there and I just talked to this perfect stranger who turned out to be a really nice human being. And I met so many people that way, waiting for the train instead of on my phone or reading my book. I talked to this couple who were at Machu Picchu. They were from the UK. They live in a town where we have an office. And so there was this fun connection. And they ride motorcycles. My mom rides motorcycles. I ride dirt bikes. These great conversations with people that I'll never see again. But I felt so present. And we need to be more present with our employees. Why does it take us not having service on our phone to actually engage with those around us? So I thought a lot about this. It was authentic connection. And yes, I will probably never see these people again. I know I won't. But I had an authentic moment with them with a genuine curiosity, a genuine conversation that made my day better. And so that is what solo travel does. It forces you to engage with strangers and you will meet some really amazing people, and it shows you the power of presence. And these same muscles that you will develop when you do a solo trip translate back to your team dynamics. Authenticity, curiosity, connection, all of that matters, being fully present. So let me guess. You have some excuses about why you can't do this. And I'm going to help you understand why those excuses are not helpful. That's not the ownership mindset. The first one is I don't have time. This was at the top of my list. I don't have time to take 2 weeks off. I can't afford to take this kind of time off. What is my team going to do without me for 2 weeks? What am I going to do with myself for 2 weeks? I just don't have the time to do this. And the way that I flipped this on its head is that I said, I can't afford to not make time. I have gone through an insane year. I have quit drinking. I bought a house. I'm getting a divorce. I'm figuring out co-parenting. I'm going through crazy economic shifts with tariffs and how to run Stone Age and build Stone Age. And I've got a lot of other stuff going on, hiring a CEO for the WJTA, which is our safety association. And I've been leading that and I'm working on my second book and speaking. Like I have so much shit that is going on. It's crazy. So I have to take this time. I cannot risk burning out and I cannot risk just being reactive all the time. Those things cost way more than taking this trip. Another common excuse is this is selfish. I also had this. How can I take a vacation without my son? How can I go do this? It is selfish if I do this. But what I learned about this trip is that I'm going to be a much better human being, a much better mother, a much better leader because of the self-awareness that I built on this trip. And that self-awareness is in service to my team, to my son, to my friends, to the mission that I have in my life and in my company. It's not selfish to take some time for yourself. I'll be bored. I was a little bit worried about this. I brought a lot of books. I read almost all of them, which was amazing. But you know what? It's okay to be bored. We're so plugged into these things all the time that we forget what it's like to be bored. We were bored all the time as kids, at least those of us who grew up and was like, I don't care if you're bored, get outside. We're so plugged in all the time. Being bored is a good thing. Boredom is the birthplace of creativity. When I was bored, I picked up a book. I said, I know what I'm going to write a little bit. I'm going to journal. I'm going to meditate. And so many creative things came from that. It's okay to be bored. Another excuse, what if I feel lonely? I definitely shared that one. I was a little bit nervous about being with myself for 2 weeks and not knowing anyone else on this trip. But this is where the growth happens, right? That is the discomfort of feeling lonely. It's like, okay, how can I just be okay with myself? Growth happens when you're lonely. It forces you to go, why am I lonely? What need am I trying to have met here? And why can't I just be with myself? Explore those questions. They are so powerful. And then finally, a friend of mine who said, I cannot believe you did this. I don't think I could go do that. He said, I'm too shy. I am too shy to go on a solo trip. You know what? It's going to be so good for you. I am not shy, But it can be uncomfortable meeting new people, even as outgoing as I am, probably the most introverted extrovert you'll ever meet. But it's so good to get outside your comfort zone and meet people. And so, yeah, go to a restaurant and sit at the bar. I sit at the bar. I don't drink anymore, but I sit at the bar and I talk to the people who are next to me. And that is awesome. I make friends with the waiter or the waitress. That is a great way to build connections. I talk to that couple sitting there waiting for the train. I talked to the guy sitting next to me on the train. I talked to the woman on the plane next to me. I built all these little mini connections that allowed me just to feel like I was plugged in. And yeah, it may have been uncomfortable for the first few minutes, but then you just have a nice conversation and you just get to know interesting things about people. You have to push through your shyness. Yes, that's uncomfortable, but guess what? Growth happens when you get outside your comfort zone. You expand your competency zone. So don't feel too shy to go on a solo trip. So how do you take a transformative solo vacation? First, choose a place that stretches you culturally, spiritually, physically. I did all of this in my South America trip. I did a lot of things from a cultural perspective. I did a lot of spiritual work. I ran in rural Peru. I have videos of it on my Instagram. If you want to see it, I hiked up into the mountains. I literally was in rural Peru by myself. I was staying at this great wellness hotel. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was classy, but it was literally at the end of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere in this small little tiny town called Urubamba. And it was so cool because I got out and I pushed myself physically in the middle of nowhere, Peru, and these beautiful mountains. So go to my Instagram, or if you prefer Facebook, you can see my pictures here. It was really cool. It stretched me. I don't speak Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I am going to learn Spanish because of this, because I am absolutely doing this more often, and I love South America. And then I really did some things that pushed me from a spiritual perspective. And so that was powerful. Number 2, unplug intentionally. No work email, no planning content, no doing phone calls with your team. Be present with yourself in whatever you're doing in that moment. To take a transformative solo vacation, you cannot work. You have to unplug. 3, structure time for reflection. Journal, read, walk without your headphones in, run without your headphones in, watch what's going on around you, just observe. Make sure that you are taking time to reflect, not just drowning out your loneliness or your boredom, or you're like, oh, this is a little bit uncomfortable. What do I do right now? With turning on Netflix or something like that. Structure time to reflect. Number 4, say yes to connection. Absolutely talk to strangers. Have a plan to talk to strangers if you're really shy. I'm going to talk to 5 people today and ask them questions about themselves and make a connection. Be open to meeting new people. I met some amazing people on this trip. I did do a 5-day retreat in the middle of this with 35 other people. I didn't know any of them. I will have some lifelong friends from this because I was open to connection and I was open to talking to strangers. And then finally, have a plan to observe your inner dialogue. Ask yourself, what's coming up for me? Especially when you're alone, in those moments of boredom, in those moments of discomfort. That's how you take a transformative solo vacation, is that you're actually thinking about your thoughts. You're thinking about your emotions and why you're feeling it. You're unpacking that baggage and you are working with yourself to heal that baggage, to learn more about yourself. It's so powerful. All right, so let's wrap things up. The key takeaways from this podcast are: number 1, solitude is not a luxury. It is a leadership tool. It is okay to be alone. It is not selfish. And you absolutely need to make time for it. Number 2, traveling alone expands your mindset and it breaks limiting patterns. This is really important. We get stuck into our routine, doing the same things over and over again. When you travel by yourself, you are 100% out of your normal routine, and that is really powerful. Number 3, being fully present with yourself builds connections, emotional resilience, and it deepens self-awareness. This is all really important. Becoming a self-actualized leader is how we are going to transform the way businesses work. This is what my 3rd book is going to be on. I already have the outline written. It's around becoming a self-actualized leader. You can't do that unless you are building that emotional resilience and building that deep self-awareness, and doing a solo trip will absolutely help you speed that process up. Number 4, empowered leaders know how to be alone with themselves without being lonely. Being alone with yourself is a really powerful skill set. I know lots of people who are afraid to be alone, and I have compassion for them because they fill up all of their time with junk food relationships. And when you know how to be alone with yourself and can love being alone with yourself, really powerful things can happen. And then finally, number 5, your best leadership insights often come from stillness, not the hustle. So when you are in stillness, when you are alone, when you aren't in front of your phone, in front of your computer, talking to people, thinking, you can come up with so many insights. You can have those sparks. Allow yourself to have that kind of time. And when you do a solo vacation, you'll have lots of time to do that. All right, that is my podcast for today. So my call to action, my challenge for you is to book a solo trip. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to go far away, but make it yours. Give yourself the gift of presence, solitude, and self-discovery. Your team, your company, your soul, thank you for it. I know mine certainly did. This has been transformative. I feel like this just, I have so much energy and positivity and excitement for the future. Not that I didn't before, but it's next level now because I just did this really big thing, this solo trip. It was hard. It was fun. It was beautiful. It was something I've never done before. I got out of my comfort zone. It was amazing. I promise you, even though you might feel some discomfort on your solo trip, I bet you come back feeling empowered. Like I did that. I did that. And I'm going to be a better human and a better leader because of it. Thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to hosting you on next week's Reflect Forward. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. If you like this episode, share it with a friend, or you can just share the whole podcast with a friend, a colleague, anybody who you think that this might help. All right, with that, I will leave you to your day. Take care.